The night shift at the Kethfer mining colony on Sigma-7 started like any other routine work period. Workers moved through the tunnels extracting precious minerals while the massive reactor hummed steadily in the background. Chief Engineer Vexhai was reviewing production reports when the first warning alarm pierced the quiet atmosphere. Red lights flashed across his control panel as the main reactor began showing dangerous temperature readings. Vexhai's six-fingered hands moved quickly across the controls, trying to stabilize the system that had worked perfectly for over 2 decades. The situation rapidly deteriorated as secondary systems started failing one by one. Within minutes, the backup power generators began shutting down in sequence. The colony's life support systems, designed to maintain breathable atmosphere for 3,000 Kethfer workers, started consuming the remaining emergency power reserves. Vexhai realized with growing horror that they had perhaps 6 hours before the air recyclers would stop functioning completely, Captain. Zektar arrived at the control center as sparks flew from overloaded circuits. The veteran colony commander had survived 3 different mining disasters during his long career, but nothing as severe as this cascading system failure. After quickly assessing the situation, he made the difficult decision to activate the emergency distress beacon. The standardized SOS message was simple and direct. It contained their exact coordinates, the nature of their emergency, and an urgent request for immediate assistance. The signal would travel through hyperspace at incredible speeds, reaching every major star system within their galactic sector. According to standard Galactic Trade Confederation protocols, the nearest available rescue vessel would respond within 72 hours. Zektar felt confident that help would arrive in time. The Confederation had an excellent track record of responding to mining emergencies, usually sending a small repair ship with specialized engineers and replacement parts. He'd never imagined that their distress signal would travel beyond civilized space into the restricted zones where dangerous species lived. The emergency beacon transmitted continuously, its automated systems repeating the same message every few minutes. Each transmission grew weaker as the colony's power reserves dwindled. Workers gathered in the main assembly areas. Following emergency procedures they had practiced countless times, but never expected to use unknown to the frightened colonists. Their signal had already reached the Sol system, where humans had been quietly monitoring galactic communications since making first contact 2 years earlier. The message passed through dozens of relay stations across known space, but it also penetrated the quarantine barriers that were supposed to keep the dangerous Deathworld species contained as the Kethfer colonists settled in to wait for rescue, rationing their remaining oxygen and huddling together for warmth in the failing facility. They had no idea that their simple distress call had just set in motion events that would change the galaxy forever. The humans who received their message would not respond with a small repair vessel as expected, but with something far more overwhelming and unexpected. Admiral Hyan-Wu was halfway through his 3rd cup of coffee when the console at Luna Base started beeping urgently. Communication array had picked up something unusual during the routine deep space monitoring sweep. After 2 years of watching the galaxy's chatter from humanity's newest orbital facility, most signals were predictable: trade communications or bureaucratic messages between alien worlds. This signal was different. The transmission pattern matched the emergency frequencies that humans had learned to recognize since making contact with galactic civilization. Hyan-Wu leaned forward, adjusting the receivers to get a clearer reading. The message was coming from a star system 12 light-years away, far beyond where any human ship had ever traveled. Lieutenant Mina rushed over from the translation station, her fingers flying across the holographic keyboard as she ran the alien words through their database. The humans had been working tirelessly to understand galactic languages, but their knowledge was still limited to basic phrases and common terms. After several tense minutes, she looked up with concern in her eyes. "Admiral, it's definitely a distress call," she reported. "Some kind of mining colony is in serious trouble. Their power systems are failing, and they're asking for immediate help." She paused, studying the readout more carefully. "Sir, they mention casualties. People are dying out there." The weight of that information hit Hyan-Wu immediately. Somewhere in the darkness of space, Intelligent beings were facing death while their desperate plea for help echoed through the void. The Admiral's military training kicked in as he began calculating distances and response times. Any rescue mission would require their fastest ships traveling at maximum speed. Within an hour, the Terran Defense Council had assembled in the secure conference room beneath Geneva. The emergency session brought together Earth's top military leaders, scientists, and diplomats. The holographic display showed the alien star system, the estimated travel times and fleet capabilities scrolling across multiple screens. Commander Ji-hoon stood before the assembled council. His voice filled with conviction as he made the case for immediate action. "We cannot ignore this call for help," he argued. "Yes, we're officially quarantined as a Death World species. Yes, this mission would take us farther from Earth than we've ever gone. But people are dying, and we have the capability to save them." Now, the debate that followed was intense but brief. Some council members worried about violating galactic protocols or risking human lives for unknown aliens. Others questioned whether their limited resources should be spent on such a distant emergency. But the moral argument proved strongest. Among Earth's leaders, President Sujin made the final decision with characteristic decisiveness. "We deploy everything we can spare," she announced. "If the roles were reversed, we would hope that someone would come to our aid. This is who we are as a species." The authorization went out immediately to every available ship and crew. Within 6 hours, the largest fleet in human history was preparing to launch toward an unknown star system. The mission would push human technology to its limits and take them into uncharted territory. But no one questioned the necessity of trying to save lives. The launch from Earth orbit was unlike anything humanity had ever attempted before. Ships that had never flown together, formed up in perfect formation, their crews working with practiced efficiency despite the unprecedented nature of their mission. Admiral Hyen-woo stood on the bridge of the flagship Seoul, watching through the massive viewports as vessel after vessel joined the growing fleet. 12 heavy cruisers formed the backbone of the formation, their hulls gleaming under Earth's sunlight. These weren't exploration ships or light patrol vessels, but humanity's most powerful warships, each capable of carrying thousands of people and massive amounts of equipment. 6 medical frigates flanked the main formation, their Red Cross markings clearly visible against white hulls specially designed for emergency response. The support vessels were equally impressive in their own way. Engineering ships loaded with repair equipment, supply transports, carrying everything from food to spare parts, and specialized rescue craft designed for dangerous extraction operations. Every available ship that could make the journey had been pressed into service for this single mission. Captain Du-Yan coordinated the fleet's movements from her position at the tactical station. 30,000 personnel were now heading toward an unknown star system, representing nearly half of humanity's trained space force. These weren't just soldiers, but doctors, engineers, rescue specialists, support staff who had volunteered for what might be a one-way trip. As the fleet entered hyperspace, the familiar blue-white tunnel of accelerated space travel surrounded them. The journey would take several days at maximum speed, pushing human technology to its absolute limits. Ships that had never traveled beyond the Sol system were now racing through the galaxy toward their first alien rescue mission. Meanwhile, the HFY monitoring stations had detected something that filled them with absolute terror. Their long-range sensors showed not 1 or 2 ships approaching, but an entire fleet of massive vessels moving at incredible speed. The energy signatures were unlike anything in their databases, suggesting advanced military technology far beyond what they had expected from the primitive humans. Commander Vex High stared at the sensor readouts in growing panic. The approaching formation looked exactly like an invasion fleet, with heavy warships leading the charge and support vessels following behind. The humans were coming in force, and they would arrive within days rather than the weeks it would take for Confederation help to reach them. His communication attempts to Confederation headquarters became increasingly desperate. Each message painted a picture of an imminent human attack on their helpless mining colony. The quarantined Death World species had apparently decided to expand their territory, and the distress call had simply provided them with convenient coordinates for their first target. The rumors about humans had been circulating through Galactic, society for months. Stories of incredible violence, savage behavior, and a complete disregard for civilized conduct. These beings had evolved on a world so dangerous that most species couldn't even survive there. And now they were bringing their warlike nature to the stars. As word spread through the colony, panic began to set in. Workers abandoned their posts and huddled together in the deepest parts of the facility. The human fleet grew larger on their sensors with each passing hour, an unstoppable force heading directly toward their isolated home. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace in a display that would have impressed any military commander in the NES galaxy. 12 massive cruisers materialized in perfect formation, their hulls reflecting the pale light of the distant star. The precision was flawless, each ship exactly where it needed to be, maintaining defensive positions that could respond to any threat within seconds. Captain Duyan immediately activated the communication systems, her voice carrying across the void toward the terrified mining colony. Her galactic standard was heavily accented and sometimes awkward, but the message was clear. The humans came in peace, responding to the distress call they had received. She repeated the transmission several times, hoping the aliens would understand their intentions inside the Kethfer colony. The response was anything but calm. The massive human ships dominated their viewing screens, each vessel larger than their entire mining platform. The aliens had never seen such an overwhelming display of military power. The perfect formation suggested a level of coordination that spoke of advanced tactical training. Admiral Hyanwu made a decision that would change everything. Instead of conducting negotiations from the safety of his flagship, he chose to pilot a small shuttle directly to the alien colony. This personal approach was typical of human leadership, but completely unexpected by alien standards. Most species would have demanded the colonists come to them. Lieutenant Yunji accompanied the admiral, her diplomatic training essential for what could be humanity's most important first contact. She had studied every available piece of information about Kethfer culture, though their knowledge was still extremely limited. The shuttle bay doors opened to reveal the small craft approaching the colony at a slow, non-threatening pace. The Kethfer colonists pressed against reinforced viewports, watching in fascination and terror as the human shuttle approached. They had expected savage warriors in crude armor, but the approaching humans wore sophisticated environmental suits that moved with fluid grace. Every movement was careful and measured, suggesting intelligence and self-control rather than the mindless aggression they had feared. The shuttle docked with the colony's main airlock, systems automatically interfacing with the alien technology. The airlock cycled through its safety protocols while both species prepared for their first face-to-face encounter. The tension was almost unbearable as the final barriers between human and alien were about to be removed. Commander Vex high-forced himself to approach the airlock, his legs trembling with each step. His fellow colonists watched from a safe distance, ready to flee if the humans proved to be the monsters their reputation suggested. The airlock hissed open, revealing two figures in advanced environmental suits. Admiral Hyanwu stepped forward, slowly, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. He raised one hand in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace, then spoke in carefully practiced galactic standard. Instead of demanding surrender or making threats, he simply asked permission to help with their emergency repairs. The alien commander stood frozen, his mind struggling to process what he was hearing. These weren't the savage conquerors he had expected, but beings who seemed genuinely concerned about their welfare. The confusion was written across his face as he tried to reconcile the humans' peaceful behavior with everything he had been told about their dangerous nature. Commander Vexai led the human delegation through the damaged corridors of the mining colony, his tone matter-of-fact as he explained the situation. The reactor failure had been catastrophic, he said, killing 14 workers instantly and trapping dozens more in collapsed tunnels. He spoke about the deaths with the same casual tone he might use to discuss broken equipment or production delays. Things happen in mining operations, Vexai explained, his translated words carrying no emotion. We lose workers regularly to accidents. 14 is actually below average for this type of system failure. He seemed puzzled by the humans' shocked expressions, not understanding why they appeared so disturbed by what he considered routine information. Dr. Young-ho stepped forward immediately, his medical training overriding any diplomatic concerns. "Where are they injured?" he asked urgently. "We need to see them right away. Our ships have full medical facilities and trauma teams standing by." The alien commander looked confused by the human's sense of urgency over what he saw as a closed matter. Within minutes, human medical teams were flooding through the colony's corridors. They carried advanced trauma equipment that the Kethfer had never seen before. Devices that could stabilize critical injuries and even reverse recent cellular damage. The aliens watched in growing amazement as the humans began treating wounded colonists with technology that seemed almost magical. What truly baffled the Kethfer was the humans' reaction to the bodies of the deceased workers. Instead of simply disposing of them as alien custom dictated, the human medical team carefully examined each one. Dr. Young-ho's team worked frantically, using advanced resuscitation techniques that brought 3 colonists back from clinical death. Chief Engineer Taman had already organized rescue teams to search the collapsed mining tunnels. The humans moved with incredible purpose, their stronger physiques allowing them to lift debris that would have required heavy machinery for the Kethfer to move. They worked in shifts, never stopping, never giving up hope that more survivors might be found. The most shocking moment came when a section of tunnel collapsed during the rescue efforts. A human engineer named Ginwoo was caught in the debris while trying to reach a trapped Kethfer worker. Instead of abandoning the effort, his teammates immediately began digging him out, while simultaneously continuing their search for the alien survivor. Several other humans suffered cuts, burns, and broken bones during the rescue operations. Their fellow humans would provide quick medical aid and then immediately return to work. The Kethfer colonists couldn't understand this behavior. Why would beings from another species risk their own lives for aliens they had never met? In Kethfer culture, such self-sacrifice was considered not just irrational, but actually harmful to society. Resources spent on dangerous rescue attempts could be better used for profitable activities. The death of healthy workers to save those who were already injured made no logical sense according to their cultural values. Yet the humans continued their efforts with unwavering determination. They treated every alien life as if it were precious, working through their own exhaustion and pain to save beings who weren't even their own kind. The Kethfer watched in stunned silence as their entire understanding of interspecies relations was turned upside down by these supposed savages from a quarantined world. Chief Engineer Taman rolled up his sleeves and dove headfirst into the colony's reactor problems. With the kind of enthusiasm that made his fellow humans smile and the Kethfer engineers stare in bewilderment, the massive fusion reactor that had served the colony for decades was a complete mess. With burned-out components and failing safety systems scattered throughout the facility, the alien technicians expected the humans to simply patch the most critical problems and get the reactor running again. That's what Confederation repair teams always did during emergencies. But Taman had different ideas. He walked around the entire facility for hours, taking detailed measurements and making notes on a portable tablet while asking endless questions about the system's history. "This design is incredibly outdated," he muttered to his assistant, pointing at control panels that looked like they belonged in a museum.
"Ow, look at these power distribution networks. They're running everything through single-point failures.
Wonder the whole system cascaded when the primary reactor had problems. The human engineering teams arrived with equipment that made the Kethfer workers gather around in amazement. Portable fusion welders, molecular assemblers, and diagnostic tools that could analyze problems faster than the aliens' main computers. But what really impressed the colonists was how the humans shared everything freely, teaching alien workers to use the advanced technology without any hesitation. Taman's team worked around the clock, sleeping in shifts right there in the reactor chamber. The Kethfer couldn't understand this dedication. Normal repair crews worked standard hours and took proper rest breaks. But the humans seemed driven by something deeper than professional obligation. They treated the broken reactor like a personal challenge that had to be overcome. Lieutenant Seung-min focused on the safety systems, shaking her head at the primitive emergency protocols. "These warning systems are practically useless," she explained to a group of fascinated alien technicians. "By the time they activate, you're already in serious trouble. We need to install predictive monitoring that can catch problems before they become dangerous." The humans didn't just fix what was broken. They completely redesigned the power distribution system, installed redundant safety networks, and upgraded the mining equipment to work more efficiently. They used materials from their own ships when the colony's supplies ran out, never asking for payment or compensation. The most amazing part was watching the humans improvise solutions using whatever materials they could find. When a critical component couldn't be replicated, Taman's team built a better replacement using spare parts from completely different systems. Their ability to see connections between unrelated technologies astounded the alien engineers. After 72 hours of continuous work, the reactor came online with a smooth hum that had never been heard before in the colony's history. The new systems were not only more reliable, but incredibly more efficient. Mining operations that had taken days could now be completed in hours. The power output had tripled, and the safety margins were beyond anything the Kethver had thought possible. The colony's productivity increased by 300% overnight. The mining operation that had struggled to meet basic quotas was now producing more valuable minerals in some of the Confederation's major facilities. The humans had transformed a failing outpost into a model of industrial efficiency, all because they couldn't stand to see people suffering with inadequate equipment. Captain Telvath's patrol vessel dropped out of hyperspace, expecting to find a disaster zone. The emergency reports from Commander Vexhai had painted a terrifying picture of human warships descending on the helpless mining colony. Telvath had rushed to Sigma 7 with his small crew, knowing they would arrive too late to prevent whatever conquest the savage Deathworld species had planned. His ship's sensors immediately detected the massive human fleet still in orbit around the colony. 12 heavy cruisers maintained perfect formation, their weapon systems powered down but clearly visible. The site confirmed Telvath's worst fears about human aggression. No civilized species would bring such overwhelming military force to respond to a simple mining accident. "Prepare for combat," Telvath ordered his nervous crew. "We'll document what we can before they destroy us." His small patrol vessel was completely outmatched by even one of the human cruisers. But Confederation protocol demanded they at least attempt to gather intelligence about the human invasion methods. The communication requests that came from the human flagship surprised everyone on the bridge. Instead of demanding surrender, Admiral Hanwu politely requested permission to meet and discuss the situation. His tone was respectful, almost diplomatic, which completely contradicted everything Telvath had been told about human behavior. Meeting took place aboard the mining platform in the same conference room where the humans had first made contact with the colonists. Telvath arrived expecting to find conquered aliens working under armed guard. Instead, he discovered Kethver workers moving freely through corridors that hummed with new energy and efficiency. Commander Xi greeted the Confederation captain with an enthusiasm that shocked Telvath to his core. The colony administrator seemed genuinely happy, his previous panic replaced by excited gratitude. He immediately began explaining how the humans had saved their entire operation from complete disaster. "They brought their whole fleet just to help us," Vexhai said, his voice filled with amazement. 30,000 people traveled across the galaxy because they heard our distress call. They didn't want anything from us except the chance to save lives. Telvath listened in growing confusion as Vexhai described the human rescue efforts. The story made no sense. According to everything the Confederation knew about Deathworld species, these beings were supposed to be violent conquerors, not selfless rescuers who risked their own lives to save strangers. The tour of the facility left Telvath speechless. The reactor that had been failing for weeks now operated at peak efficiency. The mining equipment had been completely upgraded with technology that surpassed anything in the Confederation's arsenal. Safety systems that prevented accidents had been installed throughout the colony. They shared everything freely, Vexhai explained as they walked through the transformed facility. Their doctors saved 17 of our people who we thought were dead. Their engineers worked for 3 days, straight, without rest. They turned our failing colony into the most advanced mining operation in this sector. The most shocking revelation came when Telvoth learned that the humans had asked for nothing in return. No mining rights, no territorial claims, no payment for their advanced technology. It simply helped because they believed it was the right thing to do. As Telvoth prepared his report for Confederation headquarters, he struggled to find words that would accurately describe what he had witnessed. The human invasion had been the most successful rescue mission in galactic history, accomplished with a level of compassion and competence that challenged everything the galaxy thought they knew about the quarantined species. That the news traveled faster than any spacecraft could carry it. Within hours of Captain Telvoth's report reaching Confederation headquarters, the story of the human rescue operation was spreading through every communication network in known space. The initial reports were met with disbelief, then confusion, and finally, a growing sense that everything the galaxy thought it knew about humans might be completely wrong. Ambassador HFY received an emergency summons to address the Galactic Council, the first time a human representative had been allowed to speak before the governing body since Earth's quarantine began. She stood before delegates from hundreds of worlds, many of whom had never seen a human in person, and expected to face some kind of savage warrior. "Honorable delegates," HFY began, her voice calm and measured despite the weight of the moment. "I understand your confusion about our response to the Kethver distress call. You see it as excessive force, but I assure you that for humans, this was simply the appropriate response to people in need." The council chamber erupted in murmurs and translated discussions as delegates struggled to process this explanation. The Zephyrian representative stood up, his feathers ruffled with agitation. "You deployed 12 warships and 30,000 personnel for a simple mining accident? How is this not an act of aggression?" HFY smiled gently, an expression that seemed to calm the nervous delegates. "Because when humans hear that people are dying, we don't calculate the minimum response needed. We send everything we have that might help. It's not about showing force, it's about saving lives." The Confederation's intelligence reports about human nature suddenly seemed questionable at best. For months, analysts had painted humans as dangerous predators who would inevitably expand their territory through violence. The rescue operation told a completely different story about a species that would risk everything to help strangers. Admiral Hyanwu's detailed mission report became required reading for diplomats across the galaxy. Page after page described human personnel working themselves to exhaustion, sharing advanced technology freely, and treating alien lives as precious as their own. The humans had asked for nothing in return, expecting no payment or territorial concessions. The most stunning revelation was how the humans had approached the crisis. While other species calculated costs and benefits before responding to emergencies, humans had simply launched every available ship toward the distress call. Their decision-making process was based on moral imperatives rather than political considerations. Public opinion across civilized space began shifting dramatically as more details emerged. The terrifying stories about savage Deathworld barbarians were being replaced by accounts of selfless beings who had traveled across the galaxy to save people they had never met. News networks that had once warned about human aggression now featured interviews with grateful Kethver colonists. The transformation was particularly striking among younger generations who had grown up hearing horror stories about the quarantined humans. Student groups on dozens of worlds began organizing protests demanding that their governments reconsider the restrictions on human contact. The idea that such compassionate beings were being treated as dangerous criminals seemed increasingly absurd. The debates that followed consumed the galactic political landscape for weeks. Traditional diplomatic thinking couldn't explain why a species would deploy such overwhelming resources without expecting something in return. The human rescue operation had challenged fundamental assumptions about how civilized species should behave, forcing the galaxy to confront uncomfortable questions about their own moral priorities. The ceremony took place in the main conference room of Admiral Hyanwu's flagship, a space that had been hastily converted into a diplomatic meeting hall. Representatives from both species gathered around a table, that would witness the signing of the first formal alliance between Earth and an alien civilization. The moment carried weight that everyone present could feel. Colony Administrator Vex High held the treaty documents with trembling hands, still amazed that he was about to make history. Just weeks ago, he had been convinced that the approaching human fleet meant certain death for his people. Now he was signing agreements that would bind the Kethver colonies to Earth in friendship and mutual protection. "We request that Earth extend its protection to all Kethver settlements," Vex High announced formally. "In return, we offer our mining expertise, our knowledge of galactic politics, and our complete loyalty to the human cause." The word sounded strange coming from a species that had once feared humanity's very existence. Admiral Haiyan Wu signed the documents with equal ceremony, knowing that this moment would be remembered for generations. The alliance wasn't just about trade agreements or military protection. It represented a fundamental shift in how the galaxy would view humanity's place among the stars. News of the alliance spread. Even faster than the original rescue story had traveled, the implications were staggering to galactic observers. A species that had been quarantined as dangerous was now being sought out as protectors by the very aliens who had once feared them most. The human fleet's response to the simple SOS became the stuff of legend throughout known space. Military academies began studying the operation not as an example of excessive force, but as a masterclass in humanitarian response. The story was told and retold, each version emphasizing the humans' willingness to risk everything for strangers. Other species began reaching out to Earth through secret diplomatic channels. The Veltari merchants wanted to discuss trade agreements. The Norvanian agricultural worlds inquired about human agricultural techniques. Even some Confederation member species quietly explored the possibility of establishing relationships with the remarkable Deathworld species. The requests weren't just about economic opportunities. Many species were genuinely curious about beings who would deploy entire fleets to save people they had never met. The human approach to crisis response had revealed a moral framework that impressed even the most cynical galactic observers. The Confederation found itself facing a crisis of credibility. Their intelligence reports had been so fundamentally wrong about human nature that member species began questioning other assessments. The beings they had portrayed as savage conquerors were proving to be the most reliable allies in the galaxy. Emergency sessions of the Galactic Council focused on completely rewriting their understanding of the quarantine species. What they had interpreted as dangerous aggression was actually an overwhelming desire to help others. The humans' supposed military build-up was simply preparation to respond to any crisis that might arise. The irony wasn't lost on anyone involved. The humans had made what they considered a simple mistake, responding to a distress call with everything they had available. But that mistake had changed the galaxy forever, transforming humanity from feared outcasts into the most sought-after protectors in known space. The age of human isolation was ending, replaced by a new era where Earth's children would stand as guardians for anyone who needed help among the stars.